The morning of October 8, 1918 was cold and damp in the dense Argonne forest of northeastern France. The air was thick with fog, muffling the distant thunder of artillery that had shaken the earth for weeks. The First World War was in its brutal final act, and the Meuse-Argonne offensive the largest American military operation of the war was grinding forward against fierce German resistance. It was in this bleak and chaotic landscape that a quiet man from the Tennessee hills would perform a deed so extraordinary it would echo through history. Alvin York was not born a warrior. Raised in a humble log cabin in rural Tennessee, he was the third of 11 children. His early life was marked by poverty, hard farm labor, and a wild streak that often led to drinking and brawling. But a religious awakening turned him toward pacifism. When America entered the war, York struggled with the moral question of whether killing could ever be justified. He initially sought conscientious objector status, citing his faith. But after careful reflection and guidance from his pastor and commanding officers, York concluded that defending the innocent was a righteous cause. With quiet resolve, he joined the U.S. Army's 82nd Division, 328th Infantry Regiment. By autumn 1918, York found himself in the heart of one of the war's bloodiest campaigns. The American forces were pushing through German lines in the Argonne Forest, a labyrinth of trees, ravines, and machine gun nests. On that fateful morning, York's battalion was tasked with seizing a German rail line, a crucial supply artery. But as they advanced into a narrow valley, they were met with a storm of bullets. Hidden German machine guns tore into the formation, cutting down men in seconds. The attack stalled, pinned beneath relentless fire. Amid the chaos, a small squad of 17 men, including York, was ordered to flank the German positions from behind. Using the forest's cover, they crept up a wooded ridge and came upon a group of German soldiers near a command post. In a sudden burst, they rushed the position, surprising a group of over 20 Germans and capturing them. But as the Americans secured their prisoners, machine guns from further up the hill opened fire, instantly killing or wounding most of York's squad. York looked around. He was now effectively alone, deep behind enemy lines, surrounded and facing multiple machine gun nests. In that moment, the timid farmer-turned-soldier made a decision that would define him forever. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and had every reason to retreat. But York knew that if he did nothing, the machine guns would continue to tear through his comrades pinned down in the valley. His sense of duty overpowered fear. He adjusted his rifle, took a deep breath, and began his lone advance up the hill. With deadly precision learned from years of hunting in the Tennessee woods, York began picking off German gunners one by one. He moved calmly and deliberately, using cover, reloading methodically as bullets whistled past. His rifle cracked again and again, each shot silencing another gun. The Germans were stunned. They believed they were under attack by a much larger force. As York advanced, the situation escalated dramatically. German soldiers, realizing the threat, charged him with bayonets, hoping to overwhelm him at close range. But York, switching to his sidearm, responded with astonishing composure. Drawing his Colt .45, he shot the attackers in rapid succession, dropping each one with a single, controlled shot. Years of hunting wild game in the mountains had honed his reflexes to near perfection. Every movement was instinctive, efficient, and unyielding. Alone in enemy territory, York had turned the tide of battle through sheer skill and resolve. The German officer commanding the machine gun battalion was in disbelief. He had dozens of men and multiple heavy weapons. York was just one man. Yet the precision of York's fire made it seem like an entire American platoon was storming the hill. Realizing further resistance would be suicide, the officer finally called for a surrender. Cautiously, York advanced, covering the Germans with his pistol. To his astonishment, one after another, 132 German soldiers laid down their weapons, raising their hands in surrender. What followed was almost surreal. York, still alone, began marching this massive group of prisoners back through the forest toward American lines. Along the way, he encountered German units who, seeing the surrendered officer leading the procession, also lowered their arms without a fight. By the time he reached his own battalion, York had accomplished something unprecedented, single-handedly neutralizing multiple machine gun nests, killing at least 25 enemy soldiers, and capturing 132 prisoners, all in the span of a few extraordinary hours. When he returned to camp, his superiors could hardly believe his report. "Well, York," one officer remarked, "I hear you captured the whole damn German army." His actions quickly spread through the ranks and eventually around the world. Sergeant Alvin York was awarded the Medal of Honor, along with numerous other decorations from France and Italy. He became a celebrated hero in newspapers, parades, and history books. Yet despite his newfound fame, York remained humble, returning to Tennessee to live quietly on his farm. York's actions raised enduring questions about heroism, faith, and the individual's role in the face of unimaginable violence. Here was a man who had once questioned whether he could ever take a life, who then, in a moment of dire necessity, chose to act not out of glory, but out of duty to protect others. His story became a symbol of courage, skill, and moral clarity in the fog of war. More than a century later, Alvin York's lone stand in the Argonne Forest remains one of the most astonishing individual feats in military history. It reminds us that history is often changed not by vast armies, but by singular moments of resolve, when ordinary individuals rise to meet extraordinary challenges. His legacy endures not merely in medals or monuments, but in the timeless lesson that courage can emerge from the most unlikely of places, even from a quiet man in the Tennessee hills, standing alone against the storm.